11 days. That is how long it lasted. 11 mornings of the shutter going up at 7, of the bench under the window, of glue and leather, and the particular quiet of a room that has done the same work for 61 years. Kael was not hiding. He was not training. He was not waiting for anything. He was not watching the sky. He was mending a shoe that somebody else had mended badly. And he was doing it slowly because he was still learning. And he was happy. Understand that before anything else happens. For 11 days, the lost SAIYAN had a trade, a name he chose himself, and absolutely nothing to fight. That is the longest peace he has ever had, and it is the shortest thing in this story. Goku came by most mornings with 2 cups of something that was not quite tea. He sat on the step because Kael had not got round to buying a second chair, and he talked about nothing, which is a skill. And that morning, for the first time in 18 parts, both of his arms were free. The strapping was off. The shoulder had knitted, the fingers worked, the bruising had gone yellow and then gone altogether. He kept flexing the hand like a man checking a door he had just fixed. He was healed. He was going to need to be. 16 sat at the kitchen table in the house of Tam with the thin grey plate in his hands, and he had been reading it every single day for 11 days, and he had not told anybody why. He had taken the suit off for good. He wore plain clothes now and daylight, and he looked smaller than the grey shell had ever suggested. But he still read that plate every morning with the particular attention of a man watching a door he cannot lock. Then the plate woke. Not a status this time, not a designation, not a reconciliation notice, not a word like current. A location. Coordinates, resolving and narrowing, and resolving again, closing on a small shop, on a small road, on a small planet. Something on the other end of the record had answered the notification Kael never sent. 16 stood up so fast, the chair went over behind him. The ceiling came in. There was no build to it, no shadow across the window, no sound of approach, no music. 1 second there was a kitchen with a table in it, and the next there was a hole in the roof and dust and splintered wood coming down in a column of morning light, and a figure standing in the middle of it, with his boots on the tiles and his head very slightly tilted. He was young. That was the first wrong thing about him. Dark segmented armour, a shade blacker than Kael has ever worn. Faceplate pushed up and back so you could see him, and the face was maybe 22 years old and completely uninterested. On the backs of both hands and up both forearms there were marks. Rows of them, thin, dense, cut close together like a tally kept by somebody with a great deal of time. He did not look angry. He did not look cruel. He looked like a man who had arrived at work. He said one thing, and it was not a threat, which is why it was worse. He said 91, and he said it the way you read a number off a gauge. Then he stopped looking at Kael and started looking through him, and the tally marks on his arms shifted very slightly, the way water moves when something underneath it turns over. And then he moved. For 30 parts, this story has refused to solve anything with a punch. It refused in the archive. It refused in the ravine. It refused in the kitchen with an old man dying in a chair. It stops refusing here. Kael went violet. He hit him properly, with everything, with the full weight of a life he did not live behind it. And the strike landed clean and square, and did absolutely nothing. 19 did not stagger. He did not brace. He absorbed it the way a wall absorbs a thrown stone, and then he broke Kael in half across his own counter. Goku went in. Of course he did. 30 parts of pulling people out of tanks and standing in front of things, and he went in with both arms working for the first time in months. 19 moved him out of the way. That is the honest description. Not defeated, not beaten, moved, the way you move a chair that is in the wrong place. And Goku went sideways through the shop front into the road and stayed down. 19 never turned his head to watch him land. Kael went through the wall, through brick, into the yard behind the shop, and he came down on his side in the dirt about 6 feet from a patch of turned earth that was still darker than the ground around it. 11 days old. He was lying next to Tam and getting taken apart in the same square of yard, and there was nothing left in his arms. 19 crouched down over him. He did not raise a hand, and he did not gather anything. He put his palm flat in the air above the chest of Kael, and he read him, and for the first time something moved in that young, disinterested face. 91 years. Given, not taken. Handed over willingly by a man who wanted him to have them. Clean. Unrotted. Not a single one of them stolen. Whatever that meant to him, it meant a great deal. And he said the word given twice, quietly, like a man confirming a figure he did not expect. And then he left. He stood up and he walked out over the rubble of a shop Kael had owned for 11 days, and he left him alive in the dirt. That is the worst thing in this episode. He was never trying to kill him. He was never even really fighting him. He came down through the roof to take a measurement, he took it, and the beating was just what happened on the way. 16 came out into the wreckage with his hands shaking and dust in his greying hair, and he named it, and his voice did something it has not done once in 18 parts. It went frightened. A standing, he said. That was a standing. There were 19 entries in the archive, and every one of them had a half, and every one of them had a reconciliation, and there were only ever 2 ways out of 1. Give it up, or take it. Tam gave. 16 refused to do either, and it hollowed him out and left him weak and left him a person. The rest of them took. 19 of them tore the unlived years out of their own halves and kept them, and they have been walking around with that arithmetic in their skin ever since, and they are called the Standing, and they are so far above Kael that the fight you just watched was not a fight. Kael knelt in the ruins of his shop at dusk with a worn cobbler tool in his hand, one that had been shaped over 61 years by the grip of somebody else, and the violet came up around him faint and unsteady and then went out. He understood it now. He had spent 30 parts fighting to be a person, and he had won that, and the record itself had called him current. But to the Standing he is not a person, and he was never a rival. 91 clean given years, sitting in a shop on a back road with no protection at all. He is not a fighter to them, he is inventory, and somebody has just come to check the stock. Somewhere a long way from that yard, there is a cold, dark hall with rows of empty faceplates resting on stands, 18 of them waiting in the dark for the people who wore them, and one point of light came on, small, steady, patient. Found. He does not know their names yet. He does not know how many are coming, or which one is worse, or that the oldest of them has been doing this since before Tam was born. He will, but tonight he is on his knees in the ruins of 11 good days, and for the first time since the ravine, Kael is afraid.